and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Patreon-sponsored review time again. Another crossover. And another Star Trek review that will get maybe half the views of one where I talk about Batman. Don't worry, we've got plenty more Batman content coming up. For now, though, another combination of Star Trek and a series that kind of makes sense for it to cross over with, and yet still head-scratching because it's superhero stuff. Is it weird that Star Trek has crossed over with the X-Men twice, 3 times if you count the novel, and yet never Star Wars? The answer is yes. Yeah, this is me stalling for time because I don't really have a proper intro for this one. The best and brightest of the 23rd century meeting the best and brightest of the 30th/31st, depending on which continuity we go for with this comic. Both feature utopian futures with lots of aliens. Both have multiple reboots and incarnations. Checking the time code. Yeah, that should be enough. Let's dig into Star Trek/Legion of Superheroes and see if it's even half as crazy as last week's comic, featuring brainwaves stored on punch cards that get sent into androids to create perfect duplicates of historical figures and thus Robot Hitler. And if you missed last week, that is why you should watch every episode of this show.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. What's with these awkward subjects? What's all this art so rubbish? To anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he is a man, punch, sporadically a grouch. Linkara, he has his own spaceship, but he's always on his couch. Linkara, ghosts, gods, a universe in flux. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
6 issues and reading from a trade. Covers are perfectly fine. We're just going in and not talking about them. We open in space. Space, now with 30% more nothingness. We see this rather tricked-out Starfleet vessel flying at an odd angle, though the narration implies the classic opening. Explore strange new worlds. Seek out new life and new civilizations. Boldly go where no man has gone before. And conquer. Civilization Star Trek Edition. It was called Birth of the Federation. Any other Conquest game I could have mentioned also has a Star Trek version. But yeah, clearly something is up as we watch a fleet of Starfleet and kind of Klingon vessels, or at least ones that resemble the shape of a battlecruiser, bombard a planet. We also see that the crews of these ships are wearing a very militaristic, more naval uniform than normal, though with definite shades of the Terran Empire of the Mirror Universe, since one woman has only half a shirt and their logo is 2 swords through the earth instead of just 1. And we also see that the planet they're taking over is home to the Durlans, shapeshifters of the DC Universe, and even this alternate Starfleet is equipped with some DC references, like a battalion of Space Rangers. Earth, heart of the Imperial planets, an empire that stretches halfway across the galaxy, near the bus line. Birthplace of the human race, the most rapacious and power-hungry sentience known in recorded history. But the planet was not always a power to be reckoned with. There was a time they did not understand the power of a bare midriff. 1,000 generations ago, it was simply another oasis of life in the vast emptiness of space, isolated and alone. Being on Twitter soon made them long for a return to that. We cut back to caveman times as a figure in silhouette watches said cavemen. Metron is nearby in order to give Anthro knowledge, along with a gajillion other time travelers. The cavemen soon spot the silhouetted figure as they block the sun. There you are. I don't know if I'm down with this 2001 A Space Odyssey reboot where the monolith is played by a human. We then cut to Limbo, the space between spaces and all that, where members of the Legion of Superheroes are traveling through time in, well, a time sphere. I'm not sure what the lead up to these events was exactly, but they mention having recently encountered Darkseid and some other time travel shenanigans. And no, I don't know which continuity this is supposed to be. Given what we just saw, let's focus on one alternate timeline first. Some sort of temporal eddy keeps them from returning to the future, but the time bubble isn't designed to withstand the stresses of limbo for long, so it starts to break up. From there, we cut to the Enterprise in orbit around Earth. The ship has been recalled so that Kirk can give the commencement speech at Starfleet Academy. Public speaking is not exactly my forte, Admiral, but I'll do my best. Did Kirk just do a Kirk impression? While the landing party prepares to head down, the Legion decides to do an emergency landing wherever they are in history, lest their time bubble completely collapse. And on Earth, the landing party arrives, and are naturally confused when they are now in the alternate timeline, with buildings carrying the two swords and Earth logo on them. You know, maybe this is the mirror universe and the hone edge in the logo just evolved into Doubleblade. Where are we? Well, given the amount of ships flying overhead, apparently you beamed down in the middle of traffic. The Legion also arrives in the alternate timeline, though they're clearly in a worse part of town given the mud covering the buildings. They don't recognize anything here, although Brainiac 5 can identify that they're in the mid-23rd century. Saturn Girl senses something powerful, but before they can ask about anything more, an angry mob apparently has sprung up out of nowhere upon seeing Chameleon Boy, since he's a Durlan. "We don't want your kind around here, shapeshifter! We took care of the Dominion, and we'll take care of you!" Impressive that they took down the Dominion with only wooden planks. I guess Deep Space Nine was just trying too hard. It's a bit of an eyebrow-raising comment in particular because the Dominion shouldn't be discovered for another century, and also they're on the other side of the galaxy. But we'll table that for now as the Legion tries to get ready to defend themselves without altering the course of history. Pretty sure that ship has sailed already. Back with the Enterprise crew. "Captain, look, those hills. That's Twin Peaks. This is San Francisco. And suddenly I'm thirsty for some damn fine coffee." They're unable to raise the Enterprise, and before Spock can initiate a wider scan, security personnel on hover platforms arrive and announce that accessing the communications channels they're trying to use are grounds for immediate execution. I'm gonna assume they were not just going to execute them on the spot, otherwise it's basically like going, "Attention, unknown persons, you are somehow trespassing and accessing classified communications bands. We will now kill you all without trying to learn how or why. Thank you for your patience, and a coupon for the gift shop will be sent to your loved ones." They take cover and fire phasers. Kinda weird that they brought phasers with them, to be honest. This was supposed to be Starfleet Academy. Then again, maybe they know something we don't. "Jim, every year we come back to Starfleet Academy and the damn underclassmen stun me and wrap me in toilet paper as part of the hazing rituals. It ain't happening this time, damn it!" The two groups attempt to figure out what the hell is going on, with their respective smart person reporting to the others that they are indeed in a parallel universe. Issue 2 begins with the Emperor of the Imperial planets making an announcement about how they recently quelled the Durlan threat, but that others still exist, showing off a mixture of Star Trek and Legion staples interacting, like the controllers being unable to reach an accord with the Organians, the Klingons and Kund in open warfare with each other, and the Borg apparently being minions of Tyr, a Legion foe, or at least they're operating out of his home base, a war world called Tiraz. Greatest threat of all, though, a mad scientist named Lazarus who's perfecting a new version of Brother Eye. But he's held back because his version uses punch cards. We see the Emperor's goatee, which seems to imply that it's Vandal Savage. Anyway, Brainy is able to get the Legion flight rings to work, and they quickly make their escape. He was able to recover the time bubble's chronometer, which in this case is not a clock, but a device that can detect and analyze temporal energies. He can use it to detect that they're in the wrong universe, but also hopefully trace the source of changes in the timeline. Kirk and company decide to get the hell out of there, Spock able to hack a shuttle's systems to gain access. "Spock, I could kiss you." "I would prefer you did not, Captain, if it's all the same to you." A million fangirls just started crying and they don't know why. After a hasty escape in the shuttle, with Uhura monitoring communications channels to try to stay ahead of any pursuit that might be coming, the security analyzing the Legion's time bubble reports it to Castellan Kaj, who orders them to bring the wreckage to him since it's on a list of prescribed technology. A time machine, is it? How interesting. At least this one won't be a phone booth like the last two. The Legion uses the chronometer to track not one, but two temporal disturbances. While back with the Starfleet crew, they land their shuttle in the desert and set up a jamming signal to hopefully keep flight control from tracking them. "I was supposed to be given a talk to Starfleet Medical by now. Instead, I'm stuck in another blasted mirror universe. Hell, I'm probably evil here, with a little goatee and everything." By the 23rd century, even humanity had become aware of Star Trek tropes. Kirk wonders if they're in the same mirror universe as before, but Spock doubts that. The history of this universe diverges even more so than in that one, with the twin sword symbol going as far back as the Roman Empire, which never fell, humanity reaching the moon around the time of early naval exploration in normal history, and of course eventually humanity going out not as explorers, but as conquerors, with what appears to be modified Daedalus-class starships. Fine, Spock, I get the picture, but how does that help us get back to our universe? I mean, learning about this place and its history will be useful if you need to blend in or something, so it's not completely useless. We end issue 2 with the two groups encountering each other in the desert, with, I've gotta say, a very nifty shot composition on this page. The Legion overhead on a cliff looking down, middle panel is at a slant indicating their relative positions and their respective eye lines of each other, with, of course, the final panel being the Enterprise crew looking up. Well, more looking straight out, but the dynamic shape of the panel implies them looking up. In a rather out-of-character moment, Kirk shot first at them without even trying to talk, and when Spock detects energy left behind by temporal displacement on them, he shoots again. Bear in mind, he shot at them before Spock pointed out that detail, and is now just shooting them repeatedly. Jim, would you stop being so damn trigger-happy for 2 seconds? Damn it, Bones, if we go back to our own universe, I'll have to give that speech at the Academy. I can't stand public speaking. While the others fight, Brainiac 5 and Spock soon realize that they should actually talk to one another instead. Perhaps we did get off on the wrong foot. What do you mean we? You're the one who shot first. In a strange world, being pursued by unknown forces who have already attacked without provocation, I had no choice but to shoot first. I had the safety of my crew to consider. The fact that you might not be the enemy was a risk I was willing to take. Doing something incredibly stupid and impulsive and unnecessary was a risk I was willing to take. I mean, you didn't even try to take cover or anything. The 6 of you stood in a line out in the open. The two groups compare notes and talk about their respective futures and the similarities. The Federation, the United Planets, working for peace, no war or traffic accidents, you get the drill. As I said, if everything you say is true, your world and ours aren't so different after all. But does your reality have the X-Men in it? The who? Ha! Thought so. Score 1 for ours. Checking their equipment again, they're pretty sure they're not in a parallel universe. Exactly. While the Legion was in the time stream and the Enterprise crew were in transport, the universe seemed to reorder itself. Some kind of alteration to time that prevented both of their respective timelines from coming into existence. Before they can figure out their next move, the group are attacked by the Imperial elite, dispatched by Castellan Kaj. Though, of course, as with everything else here, they're actually a mixture of Star Trek elements and the Legion's recurring foes, the Fatal Five, like a Gorn with Persuader's Axe, an Orion Woman as the Emerald Empress, a Purple Mugato as Validus, which actually kind of makes him fit even more with the DC universe, since he's essentially a purple ape with an exposed brain. Most interesting is Ruck replacing Tharok. Ruck was an android in Trek built by the Old Ones, supposedly a reference by writer Robert Bloch to the same Elder Things of the Cthulhu mythos, though nothing really supports that in-universe. It's one of those bits of Trek lore that's never really been explored. At best, some stuff in a novel, but never anything more substantial. Personally, if I were writing the first season of Picard, I'd have tied in the android plot of that to the Old Ones, given how the ideas seem to intersect. Otherwise, what's weird here is Ruck is replacing Tharok, who had half his body replaced by a machine. Except, like I said, Ruck is an android, so they replaced half an android with more robot, but like this Terminator thing for some reason. Anyway, our heroes are able to pretty easily defeat them, honestly. Teamwork does wonders. Saturn Girl does point out how odd it is that in a human-centric empire, these are all aliens. Some slaves don't even realize they're in chains. Plus, they can still be assholes to their own people as long as individually they're given power, wealth, etc. People act against their own interests all the time for the sake of greed or stupidity. Just look at, well, any given corporation, frankly. Our heroes make plans. They'll split up into 2 teams, one utilizing the chronometer and the Imperial Elite's hover disk as a makeshift time bubble to travel back in time and try to find out where the timeline changed, consisting of Spock, McCoy, Chekhov, Saturn Girl, Cosmic Boy, and Brainiac 5, while the others try to locate the second temporal anomaly in this era. This brings us to issue 4, where Castellan Kaj informs the Emperor of the presence of time travelers. The Emperor disbelieves this because of the lack of sensor activity, plus that he didn't alert him of anyone like that, but there you go. We also finally see the Emperor's face, and yeah, it could be Vandal Savage, except I've read ahead and I know it's not. In fact, I saw who it is, and it's baffling that they tried to hide his face, since I only know who he is because Kirk will identify him. The beard actually makes him unrecognizable. In the time stream, we get some amusing character interactions, in particular between Chekhov and Cosmic Boy. Oh yes, the steam engine, the printing press, even scotch, all invented in Russia. That's amazing! Our timelines must be even more different than I thought. We also invented digital watches, the color green, and the feeling of wanting to buy designer paperclips even though you don't need paperclips. They arrive in caveman times, and it seems they're a little late, since the locals, some riding mammoths no less, are equipped with a few basic cybernetic upgrades. The other team, after waiting in the city for a bit, knock out some guards escorting a member of the Dominators as a prisoner and swipe their uniforms. Ladies, may I say that you look absolutely stunning in those. You know, I don't know if I've ever met a woman with skin quite that shade of blue. Did Chris Robertson think he was writing the Kelvin timeline version of Kirk? Time and place, man! Back in the past, they realize they've arrived a few weeks after the timeline was already altered. They fight the cavemen as best as they can, Saturn Girl sensing that they're under some kind of telepathic mind control. Back in the future, Kirk and company meet up with some guards, and he tries to bluff his way past, lacking the authorization code. Failure to present authorization code is grounds for immediate execution. Beginning to suspect that the reason why they have so many aliens around is actually because they keep executing people for minor infractions. Security farther in is more trouble, though, forcing them to storm their way into the throne room right as the team in the past reaches a village, and the person controlling people. And thus in the past, they encounter Vandal Savage, and in the future, the Emperor is revealed as Anton York, 45th President of the USA! No, actually, it's a guy named Flint, an immortal that the Enterprise crew encountered once in the episode Requiem for Methuselah. A pretty damn good episode with a still discussed and debated ending. And you can see why, from his picture, I was confused by the attempt to hide his appearance early on. He only looks like Flint vaguely in the artwork, and if I hadn't read ahead, I wouldn't have thought it was him at all. Flint also claimed to be Alexander the Great, Leonardo da Vinci, Moses, the composer Brahms, and Merlin. Because hey, when you're an immortal, you need lots of hobbies. The artwork makes it clear that Flint and Vandal Savage are the same person, but also that there's a silhouetted figure that's the power behind the throne, so to speak. Also, given the energy discharge from his eye in this art, maybe he's Cable? You see, Legion? I told you that we met the X-Men! Issue 5 begins with the reveal that the team in the past got their asses kicked and shoved in a pit, shock collars attached to them that prevent the Legion from using their powers. In the future, things are going better for Kirk's team, as they get to have dinner with the Emperor and even got new clothes. Shadowlass even getting a skimpier one so Kirk can hit on her some more. Kirk is confused by Flint's presence here, especially since in the history he told Kirk in that episode, he ultimately gave up the horrors of war and became an artist. The Legion, though, know him as Vandal Savage, who of course was the exact opposite. They discuss how, like the Mirror Universe, the two could have been just the good and evil versions of the same guy, but that just makes it more confusing in what shape this version of him is supposed to be. As far as the Emperor is concerned, though, he is Vandar, the first and only, undying lord and ruler of the Imperial planets. And it also makes me your host for dinner this evening. So please, sit. Make yourselves comfortable. I believe we have a great deal to discuss. Mostly it's just an argument about whether or not they like the Disney Plus streaming shows. Back in the past, a little girl comes up to the pit and frees our heroes, claiming to be the one who brought them here, snapping her fingers and disabling the inhibitor collars. She explains that she's from another realm of existence entirely, and from the future at that. She came here to accomplish an errand, but then Vandar was able to somehow entrap her. In the future, Vandar explains all this too, that he trapped it inside of some big purple bubble and utilizes its power to bend the minds of the weak to his whims, kill those he couldn't control, and of course began his interstellar conquests. He then leads them to a hidden chamber, explaining that the group is not the first encounter he's had with time travelers, and that he uses them to explain how history might have transpired so he can eliminate mistakes that others have made before. And we see a chamber full of time machines, pretty much all references. And holy crap, I was kidding about the TARDIS and phone booth from Bill and Ted, but indeed, they are in this collection. Hell, technically he has 2 TARDISes. The stone column one is the Master's from the 4th Doctor's era. Some of these, I really want to know the story of how they happened here. For instance, hot tub time machine. And remember when I mentioned the alternative factor last week? Yeah, the ship of Lazarus from that episode is here. Dude claimed at one point to be a time traveler, but he was also kind of a liar and insane, so it's kind of hard to tell if that was really the case. And then we've got a friggin' Stargate, and that's not really a time machine. I mean, sort of. You can use it as a time machine if the wormhole it opens passes through a solar flare. So now I've got to imagine that for this to have happened, there's already a Stargate on Earth in the Star Trek or DC universe, and somehow SG-1 entered into it, and now I'm just wanting a new crossover between Star Trek and Stargate.
And you are Captain James T. Kirk of the Starship Enterprise.
Yes, I know it's still a fictional show on SG-1. That'd make it even more hilarious. I'd list off the others. Some are obvious, like the DeLorean, others not so much. But the only thing I'd like to note is that apparently in the original pencils of this scene, this ship, another Star Trek one from the 29th century, was originally going to be the Guardian of Forever. Probably a good call that they swapped it out. I doubt the intelligence behind it would actually allow itself to just be shoved into a room like that. But yeah, Vandar makes it clear that he wants to hear all about their respective histories, so that he can make sure they never come to pass. Back in the past, the cave girl leads them to their captured form, revealing that they were only using the little girl as a puppet for this before sending her off. Saturn Girl can sense the powerful mind inside of the purple orb, and it reveals itself to them as Q. Yeah, not really a fan of this. Some references to their respective lores is one thing, references to future stuff like the Borg or the Dominion. But Q is not an original series thing, yet it's a major plot point for this book. TOS is no stranger to godlike beings either. You could have had this be Trelane, or Apollo, or Charlie X, or Gary Mitchell, but Q? Like, I suppose there were those Q versus Spock audio things that John Delancey and Leonard Nimoy did, but no, this just doesn't feel right. Anyway, this brings us to our final issue. As Kirk, Lightning Lad, and Chameleon Boy are tortured in some agony booths to find out where the rest of the group has time traveled to, the heroes in the past try to figure out what to do with Q. You expect me to believe this is some kind of blasted genie? I've seen some incredible things before, but magic? We did encounter magic once before, Doctor. Even I performed it. It was logical. Q points out he's not magic, just all-powerful, and yet somehow a caveman was able to trap him. Sure, dude. Unfortunately, the terms of his entrapment prevent him from telling them how he was trapped or how to free him. Still, Spock and Brainiac 5 are able to deduce that Q can only do what Vandar tells him to do, thus they need to find loopholes in his instructions. Still, before they can try to find out any more, Caveman Vandar shows up with some of his tribesmen. Back in the future, they get ready to put the remaining 3 in the booths while the others are hauled away to be forced labor. But if Kirk is good at anything, it's talking, so he goads Vandar by calling him stupid, then gives a patented Kirk speech. You capture a being more powerful than worlds, and the best you can think to do with it is conquer? To create weapons and agony booths? You could have made this world a paradise. Instead, you've created a hell. What? That's absurd! Take him to the chamber where he will be poked with red-hot tridents. Oh my god, that is exactly what I've done. You insignificant little worm. You dare to criticize me? Who do you think you are, an internet reviewer? Back in the past, with the inhibitor collars off, our heroes were able to use their powers to fight back, even take off the inhibitor collars from the locals, or actually from a neighboring tribe, and get them to fight too. McCoy manages to knock out Vandar with a hypo spray as well. In the future, the others join in on criticizing Vandar's empire, pointing out that they were able to build great civilizations without being dicks. Kirk says his problem is the future, that even now, Vandar only sees things from the perspective of a caveman. He doesn't see that tomorrow might be better than today, that things don't have to be the way that they are now. The Legionnaires, my crewmates and I, we come from worlds where humanity has moved past the need to conquer and pillage. Worlds where humanity decided that needless bloodshed and mindless aggression belonged to the past. Where humanity looked with hope towards the future. We understand the future and what it means. And that's why people like us will always defeat people like you. It's a lesson I once learned from someone named Optimus Prime. Who's Optimus Prime? God, do you not have them in your universe either? That's 2 for us. Brainiac 5 and Spock realize a pretty goofy yet sort of obvious loophole to let Q free. Namely, that since the conditions that let him mind control the people here didn't apply to our heroes, then maybe they can give Q orders as well. Thus, Spock orders Q to free himself, and he's able to do so. Any day now, Vandar was going to figure out that he should order me to take orders only from him, and not just from no one living on the face of the earth, but anyone who wasn't alive when he gave me those orders. So all I had to do was wait until I found time travelers clever enough to free me and send them back here. Did not work at all with that group consisting of Al, Lucy, and Mickey. They just kept babbling about how duckbills were better than people and decided to strip naked so I wouldn't be the only one. However, by freeing himself when he did like this, he's caused a paradox in the time stream that restores everything to normal. The Legion proceeds in their time bubble without ever having met the crew of the Enterprise. Kirk and company arrive at Starfleet Academy without recalling the Legion. And over with Flint, Q shows up to see how he's doing since he isn't a conqueror anymore. Flint, of course, explains how he abandoned war long ago. Drenched in other men's blood, I finally realized that humanity could be so much better than it was. That tomorrow could be better than today. That it was better to create than to conquer. I also realized that it's really hard to wash blood out of ancient Mesopotamian clothes. That was my favorite shirt, too. Q says he didn't think he had it in him, that he'd be a violent savage for the rest of his life, and perhaps somewhere in another universe he is. And so our comic ends with Flint's confusion over that comment. Other universes? Certainly. There may have been only one yesterday, but there are countless tomorrows, and the possibilities are endless. That's well and all, but I don't suppose you can help me with this robot girlfriend I've been working on, can you? It has not been going well. This comic is not bad. In fact, I'd say that the final issue is actually really good, but I don't think it's great. The big issue for me is the character dynamics. I didn't really bring it up during the recap, but the two groups bicker a lot. Spock and Brainiac 5 probably do it the most, with Brainy's continual frustration at Spock's emotionless attitude, or his tendency to state out loud his analysis of things happening. Spock actually takes it like a champ, where normally he'd exchange barbs with McCoy. Speaking of, McCoy seems extra ornery over the whole situation, and of course everyone grows increasingly tired of Kirk's bullcrap. And like I said, aside from the ending, Kirk does not come across very well, acting very much like the less experienced, impulsive, dickish, horny Kelvin timeline version from Star Trek 09 and Into Darkness. Especially with the joke at the beginning about his own pauses in speech. It feels like we're looking at Kirk doing a parody of himself. It's not helped that the two groups don't actively start working together until almost halfway through the book. And sure, when reading it all at once like I did, it doesn't really read as bad, but for a monthly miniseries, that could probably be a bit frustrating. Still, like I said, I'm really fond of the final issue. Kirk's speech in particular about the pointlessness of an ever-conquering empire that cares more about blood and war than it does actually improving itself rings true, and it's a great way to show off the best points of both teams. Linking Flint and Vandal Savage was clever, even if continuity-wise it doesn't quite work, since Flint didn't discover his immortality until being stabbed in battle in Mesopotamia, and he was not a caveman. Though Q's presence still slightly irks me, especially since he's just one more person to complain and bicker once he enters into it. I'm still not sure how the hell Vandar was able to capture him, but I can let that go, since we otherwise wouldn't have a plot, and it's not a huge deal in the grand scheme of things. Still, the overall plot is okay, and I didn't hate it, but I definitely think this could have been better. Next time, we've got something weird to talk about. It's an episode that might be a bit different due to its very nature. We're gonna talk about the comic tie-in to Mystery Science Theater 3000.
I'm sitting on my couch reviewing comics, the worst words that you will ever see. It's sad that
Public speaking is not exactly my forte, Admiral, but I'll do my best. You beat the Kobayashi Maru. You can handle a 15-minute speech. That's it! Spock, prepare a speech I can steal from. I beat the Kobayashi Maru by cheating. I can beat this speech by cheating.
Chieri wanted some attention right before filming. And you're right, Chieri. I don't know if you can hear it, but she's purring up a storm. Go kitty. Get you go kitty. Aren't you a good kitty? Oh yeah, you are. Kitties.
Hello my friends, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon or purchase a t-shirt via Teespring or Shark Robot. Thanks for watching!